Good evening, sweetheart. It's Maggie. Come sit with me. Let's make this night a gentler one. The second night of December has a quieter temperature than yesterday, almost as if the day pulled its coat a little tighter before stepping aside for evening to come in. I'm settling into my usual chair now, and the moment I sit, the room seems to reshape itself around me. These walls, they know my winter rhythms better than I do. Lily wandered in a minute ago, her paws making those tiny, confident taps across the floor. She curled herself against my left foot, never the right, and I've stopped trying to understand why. Creatures know their reasons. Humans like me, we just pretend we do. I lit the lamp before the sky had even given up all its light, not out of fear of the dark, just a sort of courtesy. The lamp glows better when it's invited. Some things in a house behave like shy guests. You offer them warmth, they offer it back. Tonight, its light has a slightly different tone, a bit softer, a bit lower, like it's whispering instead of shining. I like lamps that whisper. They know the evening's language. Today lasted longer than it should have. Some days stretch themselves thin for no reason at all. Maybe it's the weather. The rain had that persistent rhythm. Tap, 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 as if Seattle keeps time with its own pulse. I stepped out earlier to bring in the mail, and the cold surprised me. It had that needle-like sharpness, the kind that makes you inhale faster than you mean to. But what surprised me more was how the porch smelled like wet cedar, and for a few seconds, I was somewhere else entirely. 1998, maybe, when the front garden had just been planted, and he spent an entire afternoon trying to convince me that the cedar saplings were crooked in a charming way. A small fondness rather than sadness. He was wrong. They were crooked in an I didn't use the level way, but I let him believe whatever made him smile. At my age, I've learned the truth matters less than the warmth between two people. When I came back inside, I brushed the rain from my sleeves and felt something loosen in my chest. A single knot of the day untying itself. Sometimes all it takes is the moment you close the door behind you and the quiet decides to sit down beside you. I've made a cup of ginger honey tea tonight. Chamomile did its job yesterday, but ginger reminds the heart to stay awake. Not alert, just awake enough to notice the room's softness. You know, I tried slicing the ginger thinner this time, and I ended up cutting one piece so thin I'm not even sure it existed. At 63, sometimes my hands chase precision more than they catch it. But that's all right. Imperfection is often the most loyal companion. The first sip carries a warmth that travels slowly, like a thought looking for a place to rest. I let it move through me, and it settles somewhere beneath my collarbone, where a lot of today's heaviness had gathered. The house made that sound again, as if it's reminding me it's still here, still holding, still choosing to stand after all the winters it has watched me walk through. In the early evening, I noticed the sky did something unusual. A brief blue appeared, a soft, pale blue, the kind that shows up uninvited between storms that haven't finished speaking. It lingered for maybe 9 seconds, 10, just long enough for me to catch it with the edge of my eye and then doubt whether it was ever there. Life is full of those 9-second mercies, small, unsure, but real enough to keep. I rearranged a few books on the shelf today, not out of any sense of productivity, more like listening to the room and doing what it asked. Books are conversations we had with our past selves, and sometimes the past needs a little dusting so it can breathe again. One book fell forward and tapped the wooden shelf with this modest thud, as if it wanted to be read again. I picked it up, ran my thumb along its spine, and realized the corners were softer now than when I first owned it. Time softens everything if we let it. As I sit here now, the window shows me only reflections. The lamp, myself, and the faint outline of the plant on the sill. Outside, the rain has turned into a fine mist, the kind that doesn't fall downward so much as drifts sideways, like it lost its sense of direction on a Tuesday evening. I understand sideways days. I've had my fair share. The quiet tonight isn't empty. It has weight, the gentle, honest weight of a day that lived its full length and now wants to lie down. Lily's breathing has slowed, and I can feel her warmth through the thin blanket over my legs. She anchors the moment just by existing in it. I thought about you earlier today, not in the loud way, but in the quiet, noticing kind of way. That gentle awareness that someone out there is also trying to move through their December nights with as much softness as the world will allow. Evenings like this, they don't ask me to be brave. They just ask me to be here, present, breathing, listening. Nights rarely demand more. As the hours begin to fold themselves into deeper blue, the room grows warmer, not in temperature, but in presence. The lamp leans its light toward me, as if it knows I'm still learning how to belong to the night without rushing it. And so, this is how December 2nd begins to close, with rain and ginger tea and a house that settles like an old friend beside my shoulder. I'm here, sweetheart, letting the night show me the shape it chose for itself. And I'm grateful you're here too. I've moved a little, just a few steps across the floor, not far at all, but at my age, even a few steps can feel like a thoughtful journey. Lily lifted her head as if she wanted to supervise me, but halfway through, she decided I was trustworthy enough and went back to her nap. I am standing at the wooden table near the window, the one I bought in 2008 after a winter that felt heavier than the drawers it came with. Back then, I needed something sturdy, something that didn't mind being leaned on. It's funny how furniture can be chosen for emotional reasons, and no one ever knows but you. The grain is smoother now than it used to be. Years have a way of polishing even the stubborn parts. Maybe people work the same way. Maybe we get smoother where life has touched us the most. There's a faint scratch on the right edge, a thin silver line that looks almost intentional in this dim December light. But I remember exactly how I got here. One morning, I tried to open a stubborn jar of blackberry jam. I leaned too hard. The jar slipped, and the lid carved this little scar into the wood. The jam survived. My pride did not. I'm wiping the surface now with a cloth. Slow circles, not to clean, but to remember. It's strange how movements you've done 1,000 times can suddenly feel ceremonial when the night is quiet enough. There's a rhythm to it, the slow arc, the soft pressure, the warmth from my hand warming the wood just slightly. Actions like this always feel like a small conversation between me and the things that have held my life for years. I'm not polishing a table. Not really. I'm smoothing a year that never quite settled. If you listen closely, and nights like this ask to be listened to, you can almost hear the memories stitched into the joints. 2008 had a different kind of silence, a colder one. I was trying so hard to rebuild myself in those months that even my breathing sounded like someone learning the notes of a song they used to know by heart. I visited this exact table the week after the PSE bill sent me another reminder I wasn't ready to open. Funny how certain envelopes feel heavier than the ones they arrive in. And I remember placing my hand right here, telling myself the house would feel warm again, that I would feel warm again. I didn't believe it then, but the table did. Sometimes objects hold faith for us until we're ready to borrow it. Tonight, as I trace the grain with my fingertips, I realize that December light changes the way everything looks, even old wood. It softens the shadows, as if the night is trying to tell me, you made it farther than you thought you would. Either that, or the lamp is being unusually flattering tonight. At my age, I'll take either option. I pull the small drawer open, just a little. It sticks on the left side, like it has for years. I could oil it, but there's something comforting about its stubbornness. A drawer that opens too easily feels like it doesn't care who reaches into it. Inside, the same little collection of things I never quite know what to do with. A dried sprig of lavender from 2014. A button from one of his old coats. 3 paper clips that cling to each other like they're afraid to be separated. A postcard from a friend who moved to Arizona in 2001. And a single key whose lock I've forgotten. It's funny. Every home has a drawer like this. A drawer that isn't practical, but deeply emotional. A drawer that holds the map of your life in objects no one else would understand. I pick up the button. It's smoother now, too. Years of brushing against fabric have left it polished. My fingers close around it, and instantly the memory that belongs to it rises like warm steam. He bought that coat in the winter of 1996, the same year we spent too much money on holiday lights and not enough on groceries. But the house glowed like a lighthouse for every lost neighbor on the street. He used to say, Maggie, December is a stubborn month. It doesn't care what year it is. It just wants to be December. And he'd hang the lights even if the ladder shook. I place the button back gently. Some memories want to rest exactly where they were found. I'm leaning against the table now, my palm pressed to the cool surface. The wood feels steady, steady in the way time becomes steady when you've lived long enough to stop trying to rush it. There's a presence in this kind of stillness, not a ghost, nothing strange, just the feeling that the life you've lived is leaning back at you. The rain is softer now, more like a whisper than a tapping. It sounds like the sky has finally tired itself out. I don't turn from the table yet. Some moments deserve to be lingered with. Some objects deserve to be thanked for surviving the years with you. There, just a small gesture, but the table understands. Wood remembers warmth. We're both creakier than we used to be, but we still show up when the night needs company. The lamplight lands differently now, angled, resting on the drawer like a soft blessing. And in this glow, I feel a familiar shift, the way emotions rearrange themselves when the night deepens just slightly. It isn't sadness, not even nostalgia. It's acknowledgement, a quiet bow to the years behind me and the years that might still be waiting. I smooth the cloth over the surface one more time, even though it doesn't need it. Some gestures aren't about cleaning. They're about completing a moment so the heart can move forward without guilt. I fold the cloth slowly, place it beside the lamp, and rest my hand on the table one last time. This table has held meals and mail and tears and laughter and grocery lists that made no sense, and December after December after December. And tonight, it held me. I step back, take in the sight, the wood, the lamplight, the soft rain threading down the glass, and I feel something gentle rise in me, a readiness, a small one, but real, the kind of readiness that doesn't speak loudly, but simply waits for the next breath to finish. There's a quiet hour, somewhere between late evening and whatever comes after it, that always seems to open a small door inside me. Tonight, that door opened the moment I picked up the small wooden box from the top shelf, the one I haven't touched in months. It's nothing grand, just a little cedar box, the color of warm dusk, but it holds pieces of a life that still glows in certain corners of my memory. A few photographs, a movie stub from 2008, an old key I can no longer place, and a ribbon from a holiday card he once tied around a bag of oranges. A very romantic gesture, if you understand his sense of humor. I didn't open the box at first. I simply let my fingers trace the lid, feeling the grain of the wood, the way it pushes back just a little, like it remembers being a tree. Sometimes memories are easier to hold when they're still closed. But I lifted the lid anyway. The air inside smelled faintly of something old. Not dust, not time. Something in between. A scent that rises when a moment you loved has been keeping itself safe. The first thing I saw was the photograph. A small square from 1996, pressed into the corner like it was shy. I held it in my hand, and for a moment the room changed temperature, the way it does when a memory decides to unfold fully. We look younger in it, of course we do. But not foolishly young, just early in our story. Our smiles didn't know the shape of loss yet. They only knew the softness of ordinary hope. Looking at that picture now, I don't feel the sharp ache I used to. It's more like holding a warm stone you found on a beach. Smooth, familiar, something your hand remembers, even when your mind forgets. I placed the photograph down and picked up the movie ticket from 2008. The edges have curled just a little. Paper ages the same way people do, quietly, without asking permission. The movie was terrible. He fell asleep halfway through and tried to pretend he hadn't when the lights came up. I didn't call him out on it. I just let him hold my hand on the walk home. Some truths are too sweet to ruin. The rain outside keeps tapping, steadier now, almost rhythmic, and the lamp beside me warms the table as though it's trying to keep the memories from cooling. I reached for the ribbon next, that faded red one from a holiday long ago. It still carries the faintest shape of the knot his hands once tied. Funny how certain objects hold the fingerprints of time long after the hands themselves are gone. I didn't cry, not tonight. Some evenings carry wet edges, but this one feels like a soft cloth carefully laid over the heart to make it quieter. Lily just stretched, as if she sensed some kind of emotional weather in the room. She always knows. Dogs understand the temperature of silence better than anyone. She nudged my ankle earlier with that tiny, confident push that says, "You're doing fine." I suppose I needed that. After a while, I closed the box, not as an ending, more like tucking someone in. Some memories sleep lightly, and you learn to handle them with the care of something breathing. The room felt different after that. Not heavier, not lighter, just truer. Like the night was finally speaking in its real voice. I leaned back in the chair and let the quiet gather around me. It felt like the atmosphere of an old church, reverent but not solemn, still but not empty. Then came a small moment, barely anything, yet somehow enough. When I lifted my cup again, the steam brushed my face like a whisper from a very gentle past. No message, no lesson, just presence, and that was enough. There's a certain clarity that arrives only after you give yourself permission to sit with the evening without trying to solve anything. Not every quiet is an emptiness. Some quiet is simply a room remembering you're here. I let myself think about that for a while. How presence can be a kind of prayer when you don't know which words to offer. I don't try to be wise. At this age, wisdom shows up the way sunlight does. You notice it only because the room brightened without you touching a switch. And if the sunlight doesn't show up, well, that's why the lamp is always ready. The rain softened then, as if stepping back to let me breathe more fully. And the air in the room shifted into something tender. That was when the realization came. Quiet, unannounced, sliding into the mind the way dusk slides into an open window. I'm allowed to keep what was while still moving toward what is. Not an epiphany, just a truth settling into its chair. I didn't rush it, didn't frame it, didn't try to name it. I simply let it sit with me like a guest who needed no introduction. Outside, the rain paused long enough for the silence to gather again. And in that silence, I felt something, a small, steadying warmth that didn't belong to the past or the future, but to this exact moment. Sometimes healing doesn't arrive as a feeling. Sometimes it arrives as an evening that doesn't hurt. I held the cup again, both hands wrapped gently around it, and let the warmth settle into my palms. It spread slowly, like kindness remembering its own path. That's when I knew This night isn't about memories or loss or even comfort. It's about permission to sit, to breathe, to be held by quiet things that ask for nothing in return. The lamp flickered once, not a warning, just a reminder that everything living glows a little unevenly. I smiled at that, a small smile, the kind that doesn't disturb the silence, but joins it politely. And the night joined back. I'm still here, letting this evening open a little more, as if it has another layer it kept tucked away just for the quietest hour. You know, there's a moment every night, usually somewhere after the tea cools, but before the lamp grows tired, when the room feels as if it has shifted its weight. Not much, just enough to say, I'm listening too. The blanket over my knees slipped a bit when I leaned forward, and I pulled it back up slowly, feeling that soft, familiar drag of fabric against my hand. You'd think after all these years, I'd have learned how to sit without losing a blanket. But life keeps its quirks, and so do I. It's comforting in a way that even at 63, I can still fumble something small in a completely predictable, almost endearing fashion. It reminds me that I'm still living inside a body with its own quiet rebellion. The shadows on the wall have settled into their shapes again. Earlier they were restless, moving with every flicker of passing headlights on the street. Little travelers I didn't invite, but welcomed anyway. Now they seem content to stay where they are, like they finally found the corner that fits their evening mood. I sometimes wonder if shadows feel relieved when they finally stop pretending to be something else. A memory drifted in earlier, not from the deep place where the heavier ones sleep, but from the lighter shelf, the one filled with soft edges and warm light. It was winter of 2008. Seattle had one of those oddly bright afternoons that only show up once the cold has decided it won't negotiate anymore. I remember wearing a scarf that was entirely too long. It wrapped around my neck twice and still trailed behind me like a stubborn thought. My husband laughed at it, not unkindly, just in that way he used to when he thought something was more adorable than I would ever admit. He said, "You could tow a small boat with that thing, Maggie." And then he winked in that quick, quiet way that always felt like a secret he gave only to me. Tonight, The air in this house has that same kind of softness, the kind that makes memories rise, only to sit beside you, not to pull you under. Lily just moved a little closer, resting the side of her head against my ankle with the confidence of someone who knows exactly where she belongs. Her warmth has this quiet loyalty to it, not loud, not demanding, just present, the way comfort often is when you finally stop searching for it. The rain has slowed into thin threads now, delicate, almost shy. When it falls like this, it reminds me of handwriting on old letters, the kind written slowly on days when the sender had more feelings than words. I keep every letter he ever wrote me, not out of grief, but because ink holds time in a way memory sometimes can't. Ink doesn't waver. Ink doesn't forget. Ink stays. There was one letter from 1996 where he apologized for burning the bread because he got distracted talking to me. He said something like, "I'm learning the recipe, but I'm still getting the timing right with you." I remember thinking, if that's the cost of love, I'll happily eat burnt bread forever. I read that letter again last spring, on a morning when the house felt too tall and the ceiling seemed farther away than it usually is. And as I read it, I could almost hear the way he'd laugh at himself, gentle, a little embarrassed, but always trying his best to make me feel like the world wasn't too heavy. Tonight, though, the weight feels even, as if the room is helping me hold it. There's something about December nights. They stretch, not in a lonely way, but in an almost generous way, giving you just a little more space to think, to breathe, to exist without apology. I slipped a bookmark into the novel I was reading earlier, right between two pages that still smelled faintly of the bookstore where I bought it last January. It's a quiet book, the kind that doesn't push you toward the ending. It just walks with you at the pace your heart decides. Books like that remind me that healing doesn't knock. It arrives the way a story does, sentence by sentence, gentle when it can be, and honest when it must be. A few minutes ago, I noticed the reflection of the lamp in the window, that faint double light that always appears when the darkness outside begins to thicken. I've always loved that reflection. It's like a reminder that even when the world outside is a shadow, the inside still holds a glow. A small one, but enough to see by, enough to stay warm. And I shouldn't admit this, but I caught my own reflection in that glass and thought, Maggie, you look exactly like a woman who talks to her lamp every night. At least the lamp listens, most days. But humor aside, there's a comfort in seeing yourself held softly in the frame of your own home. You look less like a stranger and more like someone who has made peace with being here. Sometimes I think the night tries to match its rhythm to mine, as if we're taking turns breathing. My inhale hits hush. My pause hits settling. A quiet conversation with no need for words. I keep touching the edge of the blanket, running my thumb along the fabric. It's not a conscious gesture, just something my hands do when my heart is trying to understand what it's feeling before it decides to name it. And tonight, if I had to name it at all, which I almost don't, I'd call it a tender steadiness, the kind that forms when the past isn't pulling, the future isn't rushing, and the present finally feels safe enough to sit down beside you without trying to fix anything. Warmth settles around the room. The heater clicked on a moment ago, and the warmth drifted out in that slow, waving line that makes the whole house feel like it's exhaling. Warmth like that always reminds me that softness is not weakness. Softness is what happens when you survive enough storms to stop racing for the next one. I think the night knows when we've carried something too long. It doesn't take it away. No evening can do that. But it does loosen the grip, just enough for us to breathe without trembling. Tonight, I can breathe, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough. I'll stay here a little longer, letting the room settle, letting December take its time, letting the quiet do what quiet does best. Hold everything without asking why. The evening has grown deeper now, not darker truly, just deeper, as if it has settled into its second breath. Sometimes I think nights have their own heartbeat, slow, then slower still, until the room feels like it's listening with you. I shifted positions a moment ago, and my knee made a sound that I'm fairly sure wasn't the chair this time. Not quite a laugh, just a knowing smile in the breath. age hums in the background, but tonight it hums politely. I let my hand rest on Lily's back. She's asleep now, her breathing slow and steady, like tiny waves on a very patient shore. Her warmth seeps into the edges of my palm, and it feels like its own kind of blessing. The lamp beside me flickers, not in distress, but the way a candle flickers when someone walks through a memory. It always flickers at the right time, as if it knows when a thought has weight to it. Earlier, when I stepped into the kitchen to refill the kettle, I noticed the faint smell of old pine drifting in from the back porch. It reminded me of a winter around 2008, I think. That was the year I tried to hang fairy lights around the garden and ended up tangling them so badly I had to ask my husband to rescue the entire operation. He used to say, "Maggie, you have an artist's touch, but not an engineer's patience." He wasn't wrong. Strange how memories like that walk back into a room without knocking. Soft footsteps, gentle shadows, a presence that isn't here but still sits quietly nearby. I carried that feeling back with me when I returned to the lamp, and when I settled again into this chair, the room felt slightly changed, as if it had been waiting to welcome me back with the same temperature of warmth it always uses. There's something about returning to a warm seat, especially on a December night. It's like the world saying, "You can be soft now." A thought drifted across my mind, one of those thoughts that arrives sideways, not directly, not loudly, just a small nudge of recognition. I realized I've been breathing more easily this month, more evenly, as if the air finally understands me. Or perhaps I'm the one who's begun understanding it. When you spend years filling the house with quiet, you get familiar with its texture. You learn which corners hold echoes and which carry warmth. And you learn eventually that the night isn't empty, just spacious. I watched the steam curl out of my mug again a moment ago. The way it moved reminded me of handwriting, the gentle loops of someone practicing a signature they haven't used in years. There's a softness in that, in recognizing something slightly familiar, but not fully yours anymore. My fingers brushed the side of the mug, still warm, still offering the kind of comfort that doesn't ask questions. Warmth, after all, never demands you explain yourself. It just arrives and stays. The rain has shifted again. It sounds almost like fabric being folded slowly with care. Seattle has so many kinds of rain. People who don't live here think it's all the same, but those of us who stay long enough learn the vocabulary of it. Tonight's rain is the kind that doesn't interrupt. It just accompanies. I like nights like this. Nights where everything seems content to be exactly where it is. Even my own thoughts aren't trying to run anywhere. They're just sitting here with me, legs tucked under, sharing the lamp's warm glow. There's a cushion beside me, leaning slightly to one side, like it's trying to eavesdrop. I nudged it back into place earlier, and it flopped over again with a stubbornness that reminded me strongly of myself in my 30s. It's nice, I suppose, to see little pieces of your old personality in the furniture you've lived with for decades. I let my eyes wander around the room, not searching for anything, just witnessing. The bookshelf's familiar silhouette, the faint glow touching the frames on the far wall, the window reflecting the soft interior light and the darker exterior world, creating that overlapping space where inside and outside trade shadows. December does that. It blurs things gently. My shoulders finally settled back a few minutes ago, the way shoulders do when they remember they're allowed to rest. And with that settling came a kind of quiet gratitude, not the dramatic kind, not the loud, sweeping kind people write speeches about. Just a small, steady thankfulness for breath, for warmth, for a night that doesn't require me to be anything more than an ordinary woman sitting with her lamp and her dog. Some evenings feel like lessons wrapped in gentleness. Tonight feels like one of those. A reminder that stillness isn't empty. It's space. Space to notice. Space to soften. Space to come home to yourself, even if you never left the room. And sitting here with the steady hum and the soft rain and the memory of pine from the kitchen and Lily's tiny breaths, I feel not healed, not mended, but stitched in the quiet way old quilts are stitched, one small thread at a time, barely visible, but holding far more than the fabric wants to admit. My thoughts, they've stopped wandering for now. They're curled up like Lily, content with the warmth of this moment. And I think the night knows it. The way the air softened just a little more. The way the lamp glowed just a touch deeper, the way the room exhaled, everything feels aligned, softly, unhurriedly, quietly true. I'll stay here a little longer in this gentle corner of the evening, letting December breathe around me. The night has reached that softer hour now, the one where even the shadows seem to lean closer, as if trying to listen without interrupting. This room has grown warm in that quiet, familiar way it does when the day finally decides it has said enough. The air feels slower, almost thoughtful. Lily has curled herself into a neat little circle at the edge of the rug, a quiet reminder that comfort doesn't always require anything grand. Sometimes it's just a soft place and a bit of trust. I've been sitting here, letting the last threads of the day unravel in their own time, not tugging at them, not trying to shape them, just letting them loosen the way a ribbon slips from tired hands. There's a particular tenderness to evenings like this, a tenderness that doesn't make noise, but still manages to fill the room. It settles on the edges of things, the corner of the chair, the hem of the curtain, the quiet line of my own breath. I thought for a moment about how I used to rush evenings, as if nighttime was a hallway I needed to walk through quickly just to get somewhere else. But now the hallway feels like the destination, a place where time finally lets me sit down. A memory drifted in a few minutes ago, not the kind that knocks, just the kind that stands politely in the doorway until you notice it. It was from a winter around 2008, when the heater in this house had given up entirely, and I spent the evening wrapped in 2 blankets, looking like a very determined burrito. I remember thinking, well, at least I'm seasoned. Funny how small memories, the ones that never seemed important at the time, become the warmest, tiny lanterns on nights like this. The rain eased hours ago, but the air still carries its afterthought, that faint, silvery coolness that lingers long after the clouds have finished speaking. Outside, the street looks polished by the weather, as if the night has taken a moment to tidy things before letting the darkness settle. I reached for my cup again, and though the tea has long lost its heat, the porcelain still remembers warmth. I like that about objects. They hold on longer than we think, sometimes longer than we do. My hands feel steady tonight, not in a triumphant way, just in that quiet, lived-in way that comes from letting the day be what it was without trying to negotiate with it. There is a rhythm here now, soft, slow, familiar, a rhythm the room and I seem to share, and I can feel very faintly the way this evening has shaped itself around the small truths of the day. Not perfect truths, not dramatic ones, just the kind you carry gently because their weight feels honest. I think that's what I like most about nights like this. They ask for nothing, yet somehow give so much. The lamp beside me has dimmed just slightly, not fading, just settling, the way a candle leans closer to its own flame, as if remembering itself. There's comfort in that, in knowing the light doesn't need to be bright to be enough. And maybe that's the lesson I'm quietly arriving at tonight, that gentleness can hold the whole weight of a day without ever raising its voice, that a small, warm space is sometimes all a tired heart needs. The house has grown very still now, a soft settling, like an exhale that's been waiting all evening. And I think this is the moment the night begins to close its hands around what remains. Before we let the quiet have the rest of the hour, I just want to acknowledge something, a truth that has been drifting closer all evening. The simple companionship of this moment has shaped the night into something gentler than it would have been alone. There's a different kind of warmth that comes from feeling unhurried in someone else's quiet company, not dependent, not urgent, just shared softly. The lamplight has thinned to its final glow now, and the edges of the room have folded themselves into a kind of peaceful shadow, the kind of shadow that doesn't hide anything. It only softens. And I think, yes, this feels like the right place for the night to close gently. Rest well tonight, sweetheart. Good night from me, Maggie.